Hi everyone, if you've just come in to the webinar, lovely to talk to you today. I'm up in Huddersfield in West Yorkshire. It is absolutely awful weather out there. You can hardly see. If you have just come in, please introduce yourself, tell me where you are, please. I can see Anna is from Portugal. I hope, Anna, you are having better weather than I am. Hello to Birmingham, Gloucestershire, London. Oh, South Korea, that is really impressive. I don't have any examples in Korean, I'm afraid, but I do have them in French and Spanish. Hello to everyone up north as well, in Lancashire, East Sussex. Hola to Sergio in Spain. Tallinn in Estonia. Interesting, I have been there many years ago, but it's changed dramatically. Jennifer from New York, very impressive. So we've got people from all over. Hello, Hallie. Hello, Mary. Grey in London as well. Very disappointing to hear you've got bad weather as well. But what better way to spend our weekend talking about languages. If you hear my dog bark in the background, by the way, I do apologise. So I'll just give people a few more minutes. And we'll start. We'll just give people one more minute. I know I went on a couple yesterday, but I was a couple of minutes late when I joined. Oh, hello, Rachel from Virginia. I'm very impressed that the language show, the London Language Show, is now reaching all four corners of the globe. That's really, really impressive. If you've just come in, let me know, please, where you are beaming in from or listening from. And lovely to see so many people from different parts of the world. As I say, I'm up in West Yorkshire in Huddersfield, pretty dismal out here today. So I'm quite happy to be sitting here chatting to you all. We'll give it another minute. Now, while we're waiting, something that I'm going to be thinking about and discussing today is Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. So if you could tell me, please, in the chat box, what topics do you cover in Year 7? So while we're waiting for the rest of the people to drop in, let me know, what topics do you cover in Year 7? I'll be really interested to have a look at that, because I'm going to be presenting how our approach in our trust, and it might give you a little bit of food for thought moving forward, clearly with the new GCSE. Joe, you're in primary, that's absolutely fine. Hopefully you'll see some good ideas. I work quite a lot with primary teachers and schools. So I'd be really interested to know, what topics do you cover at Key Stage 3? You see quite different ones coming through there. We've got personal information, introduction, families, etc. Hallie's looking at NSELP, family hobbies, school, simple future, yeah. Okay, family and home, festivals. So again, there's no right or wrong answer to this. Clearly, everybody is doing something slightly different. But what we will do is explore ours, and it might give you a little bit of food for thought. Shall I wait a bit longer, Jonathan?
Julia, I would crack on now. I think that's a good time to start.
Yeah, okay. Well, a warm welcome to this presentation. Just to talk a little bit about myself. My name is Juliet Park. I'm a Director of Languages for Multi-Academy Trust in West Yorkshire. I'm 0.8, which means I do a lot of national work. So I've been involved with AQA. I've been part of their teacher panel over the last 6-9 months, discussing what we would like to see change-wise and improvements to the GCSE specification. But I also work as a specialist with the SSAT and Dylan William. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how formative assessment, responsive teaching and learning can help you shape the teaching and learning and hopefully lead to better outcomes. I am also going to be giving people the chance today that are on this webinar, the live version, access to my online learning site, which we use across my trust, because we are doing some research from January, and it's something I'm sort of in discussion with the SSAT and Dylan Williams. So I shall share that with you as we move forward. So if you're aware of formative assessment, if you know much about it, great. However, a lot of teachers are a little bit confused with it because the word assessment suggests to people it's something you do at the end, for example, of a module, a unit, or something that you would do at the end of a term when you're doing a formal data collection for school. However, there is a lot more involved in formative assessment. It involves the teacher, the student, and also fellow students, and it's very much about the journey that you wish to take your learners on, but also where they are at any moment in time and what you have planned in order to get them to that final destination. So it's also very much about supporting learners to become more self-efficient and also to support their peers. So what we're going to look at is, and also thinking now, the situation we have with the new GCSE, how do we plan moving forward? I bet many teachers are feeling a little bit perhaps overwhelmed with all the changes, particularly the vocabulary changes. Is that going to impact on your curriculum? Are you thinking of adopting a different approach, such as NSELP, or are you thinking of adapting what you've got? So I think teachers are in that situation where they're thinking, do I transform or do I tweak? And what I'm going to do is share our views and where my teachers and heads of departments are going to be going from, well, basically tomorrow, because we have a planning day tomorrow. So we're going to think very much about curriculum planning and also elements of good practice for formative assessment in the actual classroom. So just to sum up, responsive teaching and learning is another way to describe formative assessment. It's very much about planning a very focused curriculum and having a clear learning focus for each lesson. It's about guiding students so they're very clear where they are on their learning journey and what they're being expected to learn. So modelling is obviously a key part of that. Obviously sharing very clear criteria with students and having plenty of opportunities for recall and retention. Now, Dylan Williams, who's obviously the formative assessment global expert who I work with through the SSAT, a big part of recall and retention, it should be built in at the moment where students are just about to forget something. So spaced learning is something that should be part of our planning. Self-assessment, we obviously want students to take responsibility and ownership and to be able to articulate where they are on that learning journey, what they need to do to improve, and also to support each other. So good peer assessment activities. Now, questioning is something else that's a key part of formative assessment, and it's something that, if it's designed well, can be very powerful in helping teachers work out, can we move forward in our learning journey? Have most of our students got a concept? Do they understand? But it also, if it's designed well, it can tell you an awful lot about what's going on in students' minds and how they are interpreting something and whether they really are getting something or whether they're falling into various traps and misconceptions. And then finally, targeted feedback so that students know what they need to do to get better. So we're going to be analysing all these aspects. Now, key stage 3, your curriculum. This is something obviously that is poignant to all of us. What grammar would you teach? And hopefully you've looked now at the new specs that have come out. They've come out for French. So on Wednesday or Thursday, it was the AQA spec came out. The German and the Spanish are not due out until after Christmas because AQA are going to wait to see exactly what's going to come through and how Ofqual are going to react to it and whether it will be approved. So you may have seen the grammar. You can see that there are full lists, interactive vocabulary lists. So grammar, obviously, what would you teach, in what order, what vocabulary do you now need to teach? Do you need to adapt your curriculum content, your schemes of learning, are you going to sequence the topics any differently? I mean, if you look at the topics, for example, with AQA, and they're all similar across the awarding bodies, there's no major changes, but social issues isn't there. And celebrity culture is a bigger focus than perhaps it was. So we need to be thinking vocabulary. Are we happy with the sequencing of grammar? What order do we wish to teach all the above things in? How are you going to help your students to remember this information? What misconceptions can we preempt and prevent? And how are we going to assess our students? So you may have seen things have got less ambiguous and clearer in terms of things like bullet points being in English. So we've got more clarity on certain parts of the assessments. We know that dictation, transcription is going to be part of the exam, and reading aloud. And I'm going to share with you how we have taken an approach on that. So when I joined my trust 3 years ago, I had a really deep analytical look at the curriculum. I wasn't happy with what the school was using. I totally changed it from scratch. And I'm going to show you how we think ours works quite well and how we think we're just going to adapt rather than completely transform it. So I asked you about the topics and you showed me. What I'd like you to do is have a look at our topics that we teach in year 7. What order might you sequence these in? So what do you think you would do if you were to come to my school or my trust? How might you sequence these particular topic areas? Can you give me an idea, please? How might you sequence these? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just to get you into the mindset of how we've gone forward with this. So these are our topic areas. Do you have any thoughts about what order you may sequence these in? Okay, Fiona, good point. So cognates and opinions coming first, indeed. All at the same time. So Mario deal very much kind of perhaps less topic, more theme thinking. Cognates and opinions, free time, family, school, town. Interesting, Luca. Yeah. Okay. So some slight variations, no definite right or wrong answer. But what I'm going to explain is how we've done this. So our approach was not thinking about topics at all. It was actually thinking about linguistic mastery. So although we do have topics, we are not governed by topics. It comes from thinking about what do we want our children to be able to use and understand in terms of grammar. And then we thought about which topics would lend themselves well to that particular aspect of grammar. And then, of course, we contextualized it within a topic because we do need to build in, obviously, vocabulary. Now, if you're using the NSELP scheme of work, or if you're looking at it, you'll notice it is very much driven by the grammatical focus, but obviously there are themes. So you may not get chunks of topics, but you will get themes. You've got to contextualize, obviously, the learning in some form of topic or theme in order to bring it alive, I suppose. So let's just have a look at how we approached it. So because we have about 20 feeder schools, all the children are coming up with different aspects of knowledge of language, not necessarily in French. We started off with cognates. Then we decided to bring in opinions. Now, the cognates are not necessarily sports specific. We have television, chocolate, rugby, cinema. Obviously, cognates can be a wide range of topic areas. So that was our starting point. Then we brought in j'adore, j'aime, déteste. Then we started to link it with simple reasons. So we brought the adjectives in, and then we started to build that up with adverbs. So you can see very simple stepping stones. And then moving on very quickly, still in the first half term of year 11, we've then brought in opinions and infinitives. So we've gone from j'aime le rugby to j'aime jouer au rugby, j'aime jouer beaucoup au rugby. beaucoup joué au rugby. And this is gradually scaffolded over time. Lots of modelling, lots of input flooding, lots of practice. We also then move to the tu form so that students can ask each other questions. Now, you might look at that and think the partitive already within a number of weeks of learning in year 7. When we tested it out 3 years ago, we didn't know if that would be too challenging, but actually learners have done extremely well to grasp the concept simply because they're seeing it a lot. Do we do explicit teaching in the beginning? I know NSALT recommends it. At the moment, we don't, but we do obviously have explicit discussions as time goes on, once we feel that students have got to grips with some of the more complex grammar elements. Then we bring in adverbs of frequency, so souvent. Then we bring in comparative, plus que, moins que, and then referring to another person. So we've gone from je, tu to il and elle. And then we bring in some complexity. Now, one of the people that I use for recording our sound files said, I can't believe you're bringing the je le trouve, etc. in before Christmas of year 7. Isn't that really complicated? Our students are actually brilliant at preceding direct objects, particularly with je le, je la, je les, because they've seen it that often, it's color-coded, and we discuss it and really go into depths with it. So we feel there is explicit grammar teaching. We may revisit, we may do even more of it moving forward. And even if the GCSE wasn't changing, we would still be going in and constantly improving our scheme of work and our curriculum. So this we've found is very doable and we've stuck with it. Then we move then from cognate, sports, etc. We're moving now onto the town element. Now, you may notice there is such a huge amount of recycling of these key components of grammar, but also vocabulary. So we're still using a lot of the same opinion phrases. We're still using the adverbs. We're still using the adjectives. We're still using the comparatives, the preceding direct objects, etc. Then we bring in il y a. Now, interestingly, the first time I remember delivering this, because we have a homework system that runs closely alongside our scheme, I remember all the students, I think 90% by then were doing the homework, all came back and told me what il y a was. We hadn't even taught it because we flipped the learning. So they were able to grasp that concept really well just by remote learning. Then we're bringing in je peux, because they already know how to say j'aime jouer au rugby. But so it's easy to transfer to je peux jouer au rugby. So we're going step by step, introducing slightly more complex grammar at each stage of the way, but we're recycling constantly. So this now is just into the second term of year 7. And again, we are really, really impressed with what students are able to master and show when we come to assessments. So we have enabled students to link the phrases they've already learnt by using ou. So I go to the stadium where I can play rugby, or I'm going to the stadium in order to. So we're bringing in the connectives ou and pour in order for the students to be able to lengthen their sentences. So then leading up to around March time, this is what our students can handle. And you can see there we've gone into the topic of school. So we're still using ER verbs, but we've gone into other ER verbs now, such as habiter, étudier. We're now bringing in je suis, j'ai. And I don't think there's any wrong or right answers to when you bring in the irregular verbs. But again, our students really do master these. And so you've got your days of the week, the adverbs of time, etc., adverbs of sequence. So that is in a nutshell what our first, say, term and a half looks like. And you can see there how the grammar has driven the fix, not the other way round. So we've got opinions and cognates, free, time, town, area, and school. Obviously, I'm not showing you the whole curriculum plan. There's more to it that you can see here, okay? But you can see our thinking process and why we've decided we're going to stick with it. But obviously, go back in, delving a little bit deeper, starting with our planning day tomorrow. So I think whatever we're deciding to do, no matter what your curriculum is like now, we do need to think about those 3 pillars of learning for languages, grammar, phonics, vocab. We need to think, what should they already know? What do they already know? What are they hoping to learn at in any point for any unit? What skills and knowledge can be transferred? And then recall and retention activities, because the government are saying independent learning is a key point. You can see there then I've got cultural capital. So we think very deeply about what a cultural aspect do we want to weave into our scheme of learning. And of course, I mentioned the independent learning. This just shows you an example of cultural capital. So for example, we talk about Boule when we do free time. We talk about the lack of school uniform when we get onto school. I did some filming for a joint primary scheme I wrote with Wendy Adeniji, and you can see there on the right that there is a student, she's actually in a primary school, a school in Bordeaux, and you can see the verb conjugations. And it's quite fascinating, and if certainly you're a French speaker, you will know that you've probably learnt verbs in the same way that we had to learn, such as être and avoir and the full conjugation. Students, of course, find that fascinating, don't they? Because we don't learn English verbs in the same way, because it's only the third person singular that takes an S in most, obviously, most cases. When we get onto town, we talk about directions left and right. We actually bring in castles, and we look at the Loire Valley, and we talk about the staircases. I don't know if you're aware of this, but staircases in castles were built in a particular way. Does anybody know why? I'd be quite interested to see if you know this cultural fact, but students absolutely love this. Do we know why staircases in castles are a particular way? The clue is in the night. Not sure if anybody knows this. No answers coming through as yet. Laura's saying no. Okay, it's because most people are, Marie O'Deal, do you know? I'll let you have a chance to give me the answer. Absolutely, it's because most people are right-handed, and so obviously, yes, you can see it, obviously, if you're a French speaker. So students are asked that question, and they can obviously see that somebody defending a castle can have their right hand going down the staircase, and then the person coming up is obviously at a disadvantage. So weaving in interesting things like that is great. Last year for Key Stage 4, we did a bit of a profile on Léa Seydoux and Xavier Bardem, because obviously they were in James Bond. So I think this celebrity culture elements of the exam could give us lots of opportunities to look at some of the French, Spanish, German icons, and I think that will be a really interesting point for students to cover. So looking then at responsive teaching before we move forward. So we do need clear, valuable learning intentions for lessons, and this needs to be pre-planned way ahead. So what's our curriculum going to look like? What are the success criteria? How good are we asking questions that make students think? And do we tend to ask students at random? Believe it or not, even if we are full of good intentions, it often happens that students are not asked at random, because we are all so short on time, and we have a tendency to pick students who will be able to give us the answer just so we can move on. So even though we might intend to do random questioning, it doesn't always happen. What we should be doing is at least asking around 80% of students, or using an all-student response system, which we'll look at. 0.9 seconds is what the normal wait time is. It should be 3 seconds at least if we can. We should be getting students to take responsibility for their own learning and each other's, giving verbal feedback as well as written feedback, and using information from what we collect to advance the learning, and let our comments help them advance their learning as well. So we need to work out where are they at. We need to do that with the whole class, and then we need to be moving them forward. So we're just going to dip into some of our resources. I'm sure they're like many people. So we do use sentence builders. We use content maps, and they get more complex as time goes on. And we do a lot of the kind of input flooding, the Conti style. I know it doesn't suit everybody. I know NCELT might not follow this exact method, but we're going to stick with it because we do believe we have explicit grammar teaching woven in and among it. You can see that we've color coded, and you can probably see that we've used bold and underlining, and that is our way of delivering phonics. So phonemes, phonics is a big part of our planning and our teaching and learning. That would be a content map moving into the Mavil, which is obviously a topic further down into the second term. Quite complex looking. Again, we wondered, is this too complicated for students? But because we pick sections of it to practice, then students can obviously go back to those sections, and more able learners can look obviously at some of the more complex phrases on there. So we do a lot of input flooding, a lot of work with choral repetition, a lot of work with parallel text. We code, and we really discuss the pronunciation and phonics. We do a lot of whiteboard work. I'm sure most of you do. If you don't have a set of whiteboards, then obviously really, really important. Just to mention a fantastic website if you're looking for simple images for your resources, and it's called the Noun Project. So those images there, the sports and the whiteboard at the top, have come from the Noun Project. Really good website where you can download simple images with clear backgrounds, and we use those a lot. So dual coding, obviously, really, really helpful. And whiteboards is obviously a great tool for us as language teachers. Sometimes we colour code to show if an extension activity, and then we put the answers on the board. Now, how do we feed back? It's interesting. A lot of teachers say, I spent a lot of the lesson doing whiteboard work or speaking. There's nothing in the books. Now, we can still give feedback, and the way we do it is we start to drip feed correction codes. And as I'm looking around the room and they're holding the boards up, I would say to them, I'm going to give you an abbreviation. I just want you to note it down. So literally, I would be pointing at students going, A, W, 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 M, S, P. It's obviously a very quick way for me to feed back. They can make a note in the book, and then we can put the questions up again to see if they can now correct their answers. So if we've got 5 mini whiteboard activities, they can put 1 to 5, they can tick, or they can put the code to tell them that something wasn't right on their response. I mentioned phonics, and Wendy did a really good presentation yesterday. These are what we focus on, for example, in the first part of our Year 7 scheme of work: silent letters, nasal sounds, the E accent, and the CH. A lovely activity that I do with students is to ask them, how many words do you know in English that are a sh sound with CH? And it's a great way to link in William the Conqueror, how the French used to speak, how the nobles used to speak French. Really, really interesting. And students come out with all sorts of things like chauffeur, chef, Michel, champagne, etc. So a nice little grammar and cultural activity, phonics activity you can do with phonics. So we do a lot of focus phonics work, so silent S, silent T, etc. We talk about certain sounds that we need to really focus on within our parallel texts. We sometimes read them out wrong and right to see if students can work out which is the correct one. We get them to self-assess. We play phonics bingo, so students can put words into the box, on their mini whiteboard, or equally, they can put in the phoneme into the boxes. So it can work either way. And then this would be where they're linking in the common sound and we bring in words that they don't know. So this is a really nice way to get them to think again. What phonemes have I covered? Do I know the sound? Can I pronounce words that I haven't seen before? So bringing in other words, of course. Now, peer assessment, just to mention, we do a lot of choral repetition. We read in French, the students read in English, we read in French, the students pronounce in French, and then I often play the silent repetition where they put the fingers in their ears and they have to repeat everything I say. They can't hear each other, they can only hear themselves, but I can hear as I'm walking around. But I play the whisper game as well, which is great for peer assessment, where they swap books, they write 1 to 14. I read the French, the student has to tell their partner, whispering what the English is, and they both do that. And then a week or so later, or a couple of lessons later, we switch it where I read the English and they read the French. So we don't tend to let them do a lot of productive speaking until we've really drilled sound, focusing on pronunciation, etc. So moving on. Now I want to talk to you about questioning, because again, I think sometimes we don't design our questions as well as we could, probably because we're busy, and sometimes pre-planning isn't a bad thing. So we need to think about what kind of questions might we need to ask. Should they be closed or should they be open? Are the questions I'm asking really requiring the students to think? Am I giving them long enough to think? Do I use a no hands up kind of setting often? Do I ask random questioning? And do I follow on by saying to students, can you just repeat what that student said? Would you agree with what that student said? I find that keeps all my students on the toes and really listening. And then all student response systems could obviously be their planners, their whiteboards, using their fingers. It could be exit tickets, where, for example, you use post-it notes at the end of the lesson just to see if students have understood something. And the thing on the right there is not a bag of chips, it's those lollipop sticks, which I know some teachers still like. So high quality questioning, planning them in advance can be really, really useful. I think also hinge questions, you may have heard hinge questions, it's another really good aspect of formative assessment. And diagnostic questioning is a great way for helping us as teachers work out, can I move further on in the learning, or do I need to revisit? Now, interestingly, errors from research show they're not often random, but systematic. It's because students are going down the wrong thought process. And when we're designing hinge questions, which are effectively multi-choice questions, they should be designed in such a way to really help us get into the thinking of the learners. So we should be able to, from the design of our questions, interpret the thinking rather than just evaluate the answer that they're giving. So this, for example, would fit our Year 7 curriculum. And what we're looking at here is to see if students understand a number of things. Have they got the possessive adjective? Do they understand how that links to the preceding object, the le or the la? Are they remembering that they need to put the adjective into the right form if it's a feminine noun? And finally, are they remembering the word order for using the word it? So you can see each one of those has a number of errors, and there's obviously only one of those that's correct. So that can tell us where the students are going wrong. Now, what would we do if a lot of students got this wrong? We clearly need to revisit. What happens, say, if they're doing it on mini whiteboards and we see a particular letter coming up, that can help us work out the aspect we need to cover again. So designing hinge questions can really help us, empower us to decide where to go next in a lesson. And then obviously we have a grammar focus moving on. Hopefully by the time the students have showed that they're really getting this, and I would be aiming for about 75 to 80% of learners to be able to really move on to something. This would be a grammar check. Obviously, we want them to really understand the success criteria moving up towards an assessment. So you've got all the different aspects here that we would be testing students on. So we would be modelling. Self-assessment, we often get students to write statements to understand different aspects and show how confident they are. And then we model using the Chile system to show a simpler moving to a more complex answer. So it might be that students pick one in each column to translate, and then in another lesson, what we would want them to do is to put that into French. So we're modeling good answers, we're showing them the key aspects. And what's interesting is our students really understand the grammatical terms because we've kept introducing them in a drip-fed manner. So this would be then preparing them to write something in French for a writing assessment, getting them to think about how we can make it more and more complex, and then they would do their assessment. Now, I mentioned our independent learning. We don't just do phonics. We don't just use, for example, a Quizlet system where they're learning single items of vocabulary. What we do is put everything together at sentence level. So we have a number of sentences that students practice every week. Now, they listen. Most of it is through listening, because listening, as we know, is such a key aspect for language learning. But woven within a set of questions, and the quiz takes about 10 minutes, there'll be some grammar aspects that they're looking at. There'll be some phonics aspects. So actually, the grammar, the vocabulary, and the phonics is all covered within a homework activity. And we know, because we can see how long they take, normally takes about 10-15 minutes. What we don't ask students to do is much writing online, because research has shown that the kind of the way that you hold a pen and write is very different to writing and typing using a keyboard. And clearly, students are writing in the exam. They're not actually going to be writing on a computer. So we cover the reading and the listening very well in our system. And then the writing is a dictation at the end of the quiz. So all the sentences they practice, such as those here, they then hear one audio. They have to write that as a dictation in a homework booklet, and then a week later, they mark it. So you can see the boy on the left here, he's purple penned every word. That also helps us when we quickly scan to work out where are the key problems in listening and that sound spelling link and not quite getting certain words. What we have since done is decided how to support SEN learners better, because many of them are quite good at doing the listening questions and the dragging and dropping and the delayed kind of dictation. They can handle the quiz fairly well. It's very low stakes to get 3 goes at it, but sometimes it's this writing element at the end that causes them trouble. So what we've designed is a booklet where they can just circle some of the key words. And that means then they can still come into a lesson a week later knowing they've done it and not felt a failure. In terms of dictation, obviously transcription is going to be an important part of the exam. We also want to make students aware that they do need to be purple penning and proofreading really accurately. So what we've got here is a deliberate dictation that's got errors in. They would be given that. They would listen to something in class 3 or 4 times. They would then have to try and improve it and make it accurate. And then we put the answer on the board and students can peer assess each other's accuracy, whether they've corrected it or not. So dictation for us is a key part of our homework, but obviously a focus on accuracy now and again in lessons. So for the last 5-10 minutes, I want to move now on to Key Stage 4, and then I will give you opportunities to contact me afterwards should you be interested in accessing anything I'm going to show you or have shown you. So 3 years ago, if you were on the language show, was it 3 years ago, or was it, yeah, 3 years ago, when we first had to do it online, I presented what I called the recovery curriculum. I rewrote all our resources for Key Stage 4. I spent ages analysing past questions, transcript, reading text to work out how typically grammar and vocabulary was used. And also I looked at all the speaking and writing questions to look at what would be really good model sentences, model responses for the productive part of the exam. So I took all those key components. I designed a set of resources for every single topic area, very much about scaffolding, modelling and guiding, lots of micro checks, often by translating things both ways, probing activities to get students to think about the grammar, why things are like they are, self-assessment, peer assessment, and of course our independent learning. So every GCSE unit has all those aspects in. And interestingly, now that we're obviously back into normal times, we haven't moved away from that approach. What we've done is just rebadged it. So it is no longer called a recovery curriculum. We've called it a condensed curriculum because it's worked so well for us and we use it across our trust. So we are sticking with it. So we still have content maps. This is based on the AQA vocabulary and typical uses of what I've seen in, say, listening transcripts or reading for how, for example, language is used to describe, for example, family and relationships. We often, as I mentioned earlier, take aspects of it. So we do some pre-learning, and that, as you can see there, would be family and friends. We often do working back. I don't know if you've seen this kind of thing. The approach is getting students to see an answer, but actually telling us why a person would answer or translate a sentence in the way they have. So it's not just getting them to do it, it's, well, why is it like that? Just to go deeper into the learning. Every week, as I mentioned, we have taken model sentences. We have around 100 activities across 10 sections, and students every week go away and do lots of listening practice, dragging and dropping, vocab practice, sometimes phonics practice, and then this would be at Key Stage 4 what they would bring in for their dictation. Now, a couple of months after we've covered a topic, we then go back in deeper where we have 4 model texts. You could call this narrow listening, and students get a booklet and they go deep into that topic. That is not done straight away. We have this delay because spaced learning, as Dylan Williams said, if you wait till something is just at the point where students are about to forget it, it's good to revisit then. So that really does go into the grammar, into the vocabulary, and then listening over and over again. So that is actually done on the booklet, but again, they access the audio from the site. Now, how do we feedback for writing? Well, we use correction coding, and it's interesting that if you give a student a score, they are less likely to respond to, let's say, your feedback once they've got the score, because the top scorer will think, well, I don't really need to improve because I've done really well. And the bottom scorer will think, well, what's the point? That just makes me feel rubbish. So there is research to show that actually, if you feedback but you don't give them the score straight away, they're more likely to look at it. And we always know students can improve. So we correction code, as you can see there in green. The students then analyse, did they cover all the bullets? Can I give examples of what I used? And what could I do better next time? So we're looking forward as well as backward. What we've done with things like reading questions, when we looked at the AQA exam performance, incidentally, our listening has shot up. Our results have over doubled in the last 3 years. It really is working well for us. But our reading, we want it to be way above average. So what we've done now is we're taking reading exam questions, but we're doing some activities pre-reading. So you can see here, before the student answers a question, they have to do an analysis of the verbs, which I've highlighted in bold. So we're getting them to think more deeply about the content before actually answering the questions. Every couple of weeks, the students get a overlap question and a higher tier, and I say to every student, no matter what their tiering or ability, have a go at both questions, and they are doing it, and they're doing really well. Listening and reading, we give them the transcript, we give them the answers, they go back and do a question by question analysis. They do that, not us. They work out what they did well, what misconceptions they've got, etc., which works. Now, the final thing I want to mention is our homework systems worked incredibly well. It works very well for listening. It works very well for reading. It's covering vocab and grammar and phonics. And the only thing, obviously, they don't do online is the writing, but they bring that into school and that's checked in school every week. The thing that was missing was the speaking. So what our students now can do is we can upload questions. The students can listen to those questions and they can give answers. So you can see here, my colleague set this the other week with some year 10s. Comment es-tu? Est-ce que tu t'entends bien avec ta famille? Qu'est-ce que tu fais normalement avec ta famille le week-end? And I forgot what the final question was because I can't see it on the screen, but I think it was a past tense question. So our students listen to it, they get a chance to hear it 3 times, they then press a record button and they feed back to us. Now, we think this is going to make a massive difference. We trialled it in the summer with our year 10s and they at first said this is a bit weird, but we think the students are going to really benefit from this because we can give targeted specific feedback. It is quicker for us to give audio feedback than written feedback, although we can write feedback in the system. We think this will work because we know we get so little chance to do formal speaking mocks, and it's so hard when you've got a class of 20, 30 to be listening and giving feedback to everybody. So this is how it would work. The teacher can use slide bars to actually give feedback as well as giving verbal feedback. And then the students listen and they fill a sheet in like this. So we want to see that the students have responded, that they understand what they need to do better next time. And we are hoping to use this now every 2nd or 3rd week leading up to the exams. So we feel now we've covered all 4 language skills. We're going to run the speaking element with Key Stage 3 moving forward. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our curriculum. That's where we're at. So I hope that was interesting for you. If you want to contact me or want some samples, or indeed if you wish to trial our homework facility, we are doing a research project on recall and retention, and we're inviting other schools to use this, and we will set you up, and it will probably start from January. So you can use the correction code there, sorry, the QR code to contact me and fill in your details, or alternatively, you can email me. It is our own platform. It's not one that's publicly available, Suzanne, but we are going to make it available to people who have been on this live training. So if you chose this session, you've got a chance to use this in your school. Thank you very much. And I look forward to hearing from you. Either you can contact me by email, or you can scan the QR code and fill in the details. I'm going to be on another session in an hour if you are a 6th form teacher on business languages, but thank you very much to everyone, and enjoy the rest of the language show today. Thank you. I'll leave it up for a while just in case you're trying to scan it, but hope to hear from most of you soon. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. Okay, I'm closing the presentation now. Hope you've got the details you need, and have a lovely day. Thank you.